Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, Instagram Movies TV Mad X, YouTube Movies TV Mad, and now on TikTok. Mick isn't perfect because guess what? Mick isn't perfect and he's perfectly fine with that. So wow, there seems to be something new to talk about every day in terms of Superman Legacy. So it's very, very interesting. An actor has come out and said he was asked to audition for Superman, but the take was too dark for him and he doesn't want to do no superhero movies. Now, I'm not sure if he's talking about being asked to audition for Superman Legacy or another version of Superman. That is unclear. I want to break this conversation down in two. First of all, I want to talk about the possibility of Superman Legacy being a darker movie than we thought it was going to be. That's very, very interesting, considering the shit Snyder got for allegedly making Superman dark. And I don't think Henry Cavill's Superman is dark in the slightest, especially in Man of Steel. That is my hot take. But I want to talk about that. Then I want to talk about snobbish actors who always look down their noses at superhero movies, because I think it's absolutely, it's snobbery and it really does trigger me. But first of all, let's talk about this. Is it possible that Superman Legacy is actually a darker movie than we ever thought? And get in the comments down below. Would that surprise you if Superman Legacy was a darker take than we ever thought? It would absolutely surprise me. But maybe it shouldn't. Maybe James Gunn is telling, a story that we didn't think he was going to tell in terms of Superman. If we kind of divert to this whole, Roadrunner versus Acme controversy, James Gunn was involved in that story where it's basically about, big corporations, and being evil and capitalism and all that. So it's very funny how people in our industry are anti-capitalist when the entertainment industry thrives over the capitalist, concept. It's about making money, making billions, but they're anti-making money. It's a bit weird, and it's very typical of this industry today. They are hypocrites. So who knows what kind of commentary Superman Legacy is going to have. But diverting back to Roadrunner versus Acme, it was going to be, be attacked right off. But what happened was, directors started ignoring WB calls and asking, what if this happens to me? And they shelved my movie. So now they have changed their minds. Zaslav has changed his mind. And now what they're trying to do is shop Roadrunner versus Acme around the streaming companies. So at least we get to see the movie, which I always wanted to do. But I think there'll be a lot of surprise if Superman Legacy is a darker movie than we thought it would be. And I believe it's absolutely possible that Superman Legacy could be a dark movie. It would be interesting. But the thing is with Gunn, there is darker elements to his CBMs. I thought that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was leaps and bounds darker than the first one. There's darker elements, with Ego, the Eater of Planets or whatever he's called, right? And when he's literally controlling, his own son, so there are dark elements to Gunn's movies. Yeah, they got gags in them, but he does kind of divert to darker kind of tones within the same movie. He does have a mixture of tones in his stuff. For example, Peacemaker was very funny, very glib, but at times it went really, really dark. That's what I like about Gunn. He can move through tones. And I think that's interesting in a world today where audiences think something should either be light or dark, where critics criticize movies for mixing up the gears, for having different kind of dramatic tones in the artwork. And I think it's a good thing to be able to do. So I think there's no question about it that Superman Legacy will have darker elements to it. Now, this actor could have been, of course, misquoted. And I'll be absolutely clear, I'm not even sure if this actor was asked to audition for Superman Legacy or another Superman movie. We will never know. I've tried to read it and it doesn't really make any sense. This actor could have even been misquoted. But I'm in full support of Superman Legacy having some darkness. I don't mind a dark Superman movie. What's important with Superman, that the character isn't dark himself. He's got to be an optimist. I think that mainly Henry Cavill's Superman is an optimist in Man of Steel. He's not so much the optimist in Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, a movie I love. But he's not really an optimist because everyone, like half the world, is ganging up against him and saying, you know, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's very, very hard for Clark. So he's not as much of an optimist because of that story, which causes a problem if you're, you know, an older Superman fan who don't agree with that. But I kind of got what Snyder was trying to do. And by Justice League 3, he would be absolutely the optimist, leading out a meta-human army about, you know, against Darkseid and his new gods. It was about taking the character to that place he should be. And people were too emotionally unintelligent to actually understand what Snyder was planning. But I think people will spit the dummy out, especially Snyder fans, if Superman Legacy actually is a darker movie. So what is Gunn doing here? If indeed this actor was given some kind of pages to do an audition for, but then he turned that down. And I think, yeah, this will get people talking. As I say, I'm all for a darker Superman movie, but he can't be dark. You know, elements around him can be dark, but he can't be. Maybe it's better for Superman as a character if he is the optimist, but everything around him is going to hell. Maybe that's a better thing for Superman because then you can see what an optimist he is. In the Smallville episode Legion, the Legion want Clark to kill Chloe because she's been taken over by Brainiac. Everyone wants him to kill his best friend, but Clark won't do that. So you've got dark situations going around Clark in that episode, but he's the optimist. He cannot kill his best friend, not when there's any chance he can save her. That's exactly what Superman is, and that's the point Geoff Johns was making in this Smallville story. So I think you can tell darker Superman stories, but he must always be the most optimistic character in the story. If you can pull that off, that's brilliant. So as I say, you know, I think this actor's name is Jacob Elordi or whatever he is, right? He was criticising doing a rom-com once or whatever he did. I think he was really venting about his career. So there's not much we can take as facts from this, but what we can do is look at the possibilities of Superman Legacy being a darker movie than we thought. Because I think James Gunn is a very interesting writer-director. I think his fans look at him as this fun director who makes fun and light movies with a lot of comedy in them. But no, as I said earlier, his movies always have an element of darkness to them. In every one of his movies, he twists the gears up. So it's important to remember that we may not be getting a bright, light MCU Superman movie. In fact, I don't think we are. I think we're going to get something quite different for Superman Legacy. And I want to see something different. I don't want to see the same thing. We've seen Superman the movie. I have so many different versions of Superman the movie in my collection. I don't need another Superman the movie. Superman the movie will not work for today's audience. There's no question about that. You know, people want to see a really strong Lois Lane being a character in her own right. They'll want to see Superman being Superman. They'll want to see Clark being Clark, you know. So it's look, when you're telling a story of such a famous character, people are watching. and they're watching for any opportunity that you've got it wrong. And that is the pressure that James Gunn or anyone who works on any adapts any existing iconic characters. And that's the problem that he's got. That's the pressure of doing Superman. And if you don't want that pressure, don't do Superman. So yeah, I think, you've got to be bold, you've got to be different, but I think that Superman should always be the optimist. But yeah, give us something. Give us, this character absolutely needs a shot in the arm. I've always spoken about Superman being pure, being good, being the optimist. Doesn't mean that should make him boring. He should be able to tell the odd joke. Clark and Superman should have a little bit of a personality. They can crack the odd joke like, Tony Stark does in the Iron Man movies or in the Avengers movies. That's okay too. Just because he's a wholesome character, it doesn't mean you gut him of personality. That's been the problem with Superman sometimes in live action. I think, that's what you needed more of in Superman Returns. Even in Man of Steel, Superman could have done with a little bit more personality, or the Henry Cavill version as a whole. Something that James Gunn can certainly do is give Superman the personality he should have. And that's the difference. Christopher Reeve's Clark and Superman had personality, but they were both wholesome at the same time. And that's what Donner and Mankiewicz and Reeve did so well. Because Reeve's Superman wasn't boring. He did have personality. He would crack the odd joke, So that's important as well. Because to make a character relatable, even Superman, people have got to relate to that character. And there are ways, you could relate to Superman. People say they find it hard to relate to Superman. The fact that, he's the ultimate immigrant. Well, people who have been immigrants could look at Superman and relate to him if that character was written in the right way. And I think Superman has that element of being the ultimate immigrant has never been looked at that deeply. It's been touched on in Smallville and other shows, but if you want to, people today want to relate to their characters. You can't just shove Superman in an iconic costume and hope that people relate to him. That's the problem with Superman Returns and some of the elements that people didn't like about the Superman in the Snyderverse as well. So you have to take those themes and use them to your advantage, and then people can relate to Superman. The fact that he is all-powerful can be a problem for some people to relate to, not to me. I think it's awesome that he's got all these powers and he's so wholesome. But what you do is you give him emotional challenges. That's what they did on Smallville so well. His relationship with Lana, Chloe, Pete, Lex especially, Lionel, it was those elements, and him discovering his new powers and finding that difficult to come to terms with was why Clark in Smallville is probably the most relatable live action version of the character we've ever seen, because they were on a TV show and they couldn't do epic battles and stuff like that. They had to create a drama. They had to create a show. In a lot of ways, they had to create a soap opera as well. And it worked. So you should always, your number one thing with any character is to make them relatable. Because if the audience don't relate to your characters, you may as well not waste your oxygen in writing anything. So that's what Superman needs. You can make him relatable. You can make him interesting. And he can be around the dark world as long as he is the central optimist. And this is how you go at Superman. But making him dark, making him a killer, things like that are never going to work out that well for you. As we saw in the polarizing kind of reaction to Man of Steel. A Superman movie, I think is absolutely fantastic. But a lot of people didn't like elements of it, didn't like Superman killing Zod. I didn't even understand the point in Superman killing Zod, because you could have saved Zod to come back for another day. But then obviously they did the whole Doomsday thing, and maybe Zack planned that from the beginning. Who knows? But yeah, There are so many ways that you can have a darker world for Superman, that he has more personality. You just have to be a smart writer. And one thing James Gunn is a very smart writer. But can he pull this off? We're going to have to wait and see. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. Now let's go back to this actor who was putting down being in a superhero movie. It seems to be fashionable today for actors to look down at their noses at comic book movies. I would never do a superhero. Why is it today that playing in a superhero movie is the epitaph? And you know, there's this snobbery. And the thing is with this actor who spoke about like Superman being too dark for him, or he doesn't want to be in a superhero movie, it's like, why are you such a snob? I mean, okay, maybe you're a well-known actor. I mean, I've kind of heard of him, this Jacob Elordi or whatever his name is, right? But he's not an A-list or anything like this. You know, beggars can't be choosers. But for me, it would be crazy to come out as an actor and say, oh no, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that. It's just weird to see this snobbery from actors and artists today. I think, well, let's look at it. Marlon Brando was in a superhero movie. Russell Crowe was in a superhero movie. Gene Hackman, these are actors much better than you, Jacob, have been in superhero movies. So what's so special about you? Get that stick out of your backside, son. You know, the reason you were offered the Superman part is because you look like Superman. But you could have demanded that you were challenged as the character. You could have done something special. Christopher Reeve may have not had a huge career beyond Superman, but he was one of the best actors I've ever seen perform on a screen in moving pictures. He was a very good actor. And in the end, his career didn't amount to much. But what's beautiful about it is he will always be remembered as Superman. Now, while he was alive, maybe that was problematic for him. But as a, you know, someone now, he's dead, obviously, but he's been immortalized by playing the Man of Steel. So look, it's very, very difficult for an actor and frustrating when they get typecast. And it's one of the reasons they avoid superhero movies. For example, if you're one of the actors who played the characters in Friends, you will be typecast forever. Courtney Cox will always be, you know, Monica. You know, Jen Aniston will always be Rachel. You know, David Swimmer will always be Ross. It's difficult for an actor. We heard what Matthew Perry said, you know, after he died. We heard that he didn't want to be particularly remembered for playing Chandler, but he'd rather be remembered for what he did for addicts, because he was an addict. You know, Matthew suffered throughout his life, really, with addiction. But, you know, as much as I want to respect those wishes, and I will remember him for that as well, ultimately, he's going to be, you know, remembered for playing Chandler. That's why people know who he is. But typecasting is a big problem in the industry. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about it at the end of the day. You know, typecasting, you know, you are sometimes, if you do something so well, you end up being remembered for it at the end of the day. And is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? I don't know. I think typecasting is the problem of the industry, where they go, oh, he can't play this character because, you know, oh, he's remembered for playing that character. That's bollocks. A good actor can play anything and anyone, even if you're remembered famously for playing a role. So all this stubbornness about, you know, being in superheroes and how these actors say, oh, I'd never be in a superhero movie. Look, if you're Leonardo DiCaprio, right, and you say, I don't want to be in a superhero movie, I get it. You're Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the best actors who ever lived. You have the right to be a snob. But when you're this Jacob geezer and actors like that, and they start all this, I don't want to be in a superhero movie, and it's all very beyond me, do you know what I mean? It kind of pisses me off, because as a lover of superheroes and superhero movies, the good superhero movies, let's look at one of the best actors of our time. Joaquin Phoenix was in a comic book movie playing one of the most iconic comic book villains, the Joker. They were able to make an indie movie, an original story about the Joker. So there are lots of opportunities for actors to be challenged as these are iconic characters. And to somewhat just dismiss them, I think, for me personally, I think you're losing out. And I think just turning something down because it happens to be a superhero, I think is wrong. But the problem with these people today, that publicly they don't keep their mouth shut and they say shit that makes them look stupid. What was the point of coming out publicly diminishing actors who play superheroes, saying that he's too good to play a superhero? Because that's how it comes across, doesn't it? It sounds like you think you're too special to play a superhero, and you're not, Jacob. You're nothing special at the end of the day. All actors have regrets about some of the things they've done, and how some of the things they're remembered by. And I mean, look, there's so many struggling actors out there. Struggling actors would love to have these problems, but if you don't want to be in a superhero movie or play a superhero, that's up to you. That's your prerogative. But it doesn't mean you have to come out publicly thinking you're clever, because these people are always looking for the high applause, aren't they? Yes, quite right, these superhero movies are a disease to our industry. I understand why talented people hate the superhero genre today, because it's taken over cinema and it's reduced the potential of making, a variety of content and films and art, and I understand that. But I think there's a place for superhero movies, but they shouldn't be dominating. You shouldn't be just making superhero movies. I've been saying that for the longest of time. But it's nobody's fault but the industries itself for going down this road. They over-facilitated the market with superhero movies, and now everyone's getting fed up of superhero movies. In terms of the Marvels flopping, it's nothing to do with people being fed up of comic book movies. People are fed up of bad, really bad, mid superhero movies, and that's why that movie doesn't work. And Disney and Marvel have no idea how to represent women or any marginalised communities. I don't think they're that interested in doing it. It's all about virtue signalling. It's all about pandering to so-called the Twitter community. And that's the problem. If you're going to do something, do it with imagination. Do it with wonder. So whatever your commentary is, whatever you're trying to represent and include, it actually works. And that's my thought process around that. But yeah, I don't see the point of an actor coming out and saying, I don't want to do superheroes. It's like, it doesn't make... For me, it's not about what you look to your own industry, it's what you look like to the public. Because it is the public who are going to consume your content and either support you or not support you. And considering a lot of the public love the superhero genre, I think the last thing you should be saying as an actor is, oh, I would never do that. But the thing is with this as well, it proves these people are not that intelligent, because if you were an intelligent person, an intelligent artist, you check yourself at the front door. There's things in life you say and there's things you don't say. And I think, yes, I understand the frustration with the superhero genre taking over the market, but at the end of the day, you do need us, the public, and many of us in the public love the superhero genre. So at the end of the day, I don't really understand what the motivation is to say it. I think what happens is they get a microphone in their face, they get a bit overexcited, and they say shit. And a lot of them do this in the industry today. So for me, it's not I don't warm to people who put down superhero movies. And as I understand what Martin Scorsese said in the New York Post about the Marvel Cinematic Universe was absolutely true, by the way. But MCU fans turned on him because they didn't like something they supported being tarnished and trashed. But Scorsese had a tactic. Scorsese had a reason for doing it, because basically smaller films were being squeezed out by Disney and Marvel. And it was a similar situation happened to, Quentin Tarantino with one of his movies. He had to put a big fight on. And so this is why there's a frustration with CBMs today and bigger studios trying to, push their way through. So I get that, but that's not the fault of superheroes themselves. I think there's room in this space for everyone. And one thing that Hollywood have done badly in the past 10 years is have a variety of content. The problem is today, have Hollywood initiated enough talent? Are there talented people in Hollywood, or are they just people with political ideology? I believe there's too many people making entertainment today that have more of a motivation to brand their political ideology rather than making great, vibrant, imaginative entertainment. And I think this is where Hollywood has been damaged the most. They need to go to film schools. They need to find talent. But they're not interested anymore in making great entertainment. They're interested in hot takes. And I think that's the problem there. But I think, I understand the frustration towards superhero movies, but still, I don't see, I can't imagine being a successful actor and thinking, oh yeah, I'd never do a superhero movie. But then I love superheroes and it would be fun for me to play in that ballpark. But, it's interesting that this actor said it was too dark. And as I say, I'd love to know if he's talking about Superman Legacy, or another version of Superman. I'm going to look into that for you and try and find out. Because if Superman Legacy was a darker movie, people are going to say, well, people need to apologise to Zack Snyder. But then there is one way of doing darker comic book content, and, there's two ways of doing it. Look, Snyder has always loved subversive comics. We know that. He's admitted that many, many times. So Snyder's an auteur. He's a unique movie, storyteller, movie maker, So when you bring him on, you've got to be fully aware that he's going to trigger a lot of people. And if you want to make mainstream comic book movies, if you want to have, a connected universe, probably Snyder wasn't the best person to bring in. So that process was very, very strange, where they brought in Nolan and Goya to write Man of Steel. Nolan was in charge of that movie, brought in the director himself. And then you've got a certain mentality. But because Nolan had done a brilliant Dark Knight trilogy, they thought, who better to decide who comes in to make Man of Steel than Christopher Nolan himself? But Christopher Nolan has an auteur's mindset. He doesn't necessarily have the box office in mind. Or, he doesn't have Kevin Feige's mentality. I mean, even Kevin Feige doesn't have Kevin Feige's mentality anymore. But when you bring in someone like Nolan, it's all about the film. It's all about the story. It's all about the vibe. It's not about making money. And that's another debate we need to look at today, isn't it, really? That what's more important? Rotten Tomatoes scores, cinema scores, big box office, or making a really good film that people enjoy that maybe won't necessarily make $1 billion. And it's become such a corporate business today that it does seem like the box office, the message, is the most important thing. But I think films with the message are so badly done that the box office gets affected in the end. A bit like the Marvels. They're promoting girl power. They're promoting strong females. But not only do they fail in representing strong females, they failed in making a great, imaginative, vibrant movie. Hollywood are at a crossroads where they have to decide what they do going forward. Are they willing to change? Are they willing to make great entertainment, or will they continue doing what they're doing? Having people like Rachel Zegler putting down the original Snow White isn't a good idea when you're trying to sell a Snow White movie where people are going to come and see it because of the nostalgia of the original Walt Disney classic, right? And the original fairy tale. And if you got someone saying, that's shit, that's old fashioned, that Prince Charming is a stalker, what do you think's going to happen to that film? So Hollywood today really have to reevaluate themselves and decide, do they want to go bankrupt or do they want to make entertainment?